Sounds awkward when you guys go silent.
All right, if everybody's attention, we'll call this meeting to order. This is the city of Cottonwood Heights. It is Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. My name is Mayor Mike Peterson. This is our work session for tonight. And before you have an agenda. And part of the agenda, of course, is a welcome. And I need to excuse Council Member Bruce, who is not feeling well this evening. Councilor Michael should be here in a moment. I know she's often working. And also need to excuse Shane Topham, our city attorney, who's also traveling this evening. The next item on your agenda is a review of the business meeting, which will be at 7 o'clock, and a reminder to the council. We're on a pretty tight schedule with a busy work session agenda, so I appreciate your help in getting through the staff reports in a timely fashion, because we also have a closed session. We hope to be in that closed session by approximately 6:30 to talk about real estate. With that, looking at the business meeting agenda, of course, welcome, pledge of allegiance, citizen comments. I assume we'll have a couple of citizens there who would like to comment, because I've heard some will be here. Then we have just two action items. And again, you'll note that this agenda is very short, being election night. I know that some people on the council will want to be involved in monitoring the results of the election. So the first item, 4.1, is resolution 2021-54, approving entry into a service agreement with Pacific Corps. So who wants to kind of introduce that? Matt?
Excuse me, Mayor and Council, that is part of our stormwater fee that you, as a council, implemented during the budget process.
The collection.
The collection of that fee. Rocky Mountain Power, through their parent company, Pacific Corp, has finally done the tariff that allows them to share the information. So for the billing, and so this is the agreement for them to do the monthly billing based on their fee schedule.
Any surprises?
No surprises that we've seen, no, sir.
I think if you may share with the council, the rate per invoice is 30 or 40 cents.
I believe so. It comes at, yes, it's about 40 cents.
Yeah. That's what I know.
So when we originally started this, if you'll recall, it was like, it was over $1.
Yeah.
And it was not cost effective at that point. So it's worked itself down. And
I think this is the same vendor and use that some of our sister cities use.
Yes, that is correct. And we appreciate Rocky Mountain Power just publicly. We want to say that, working with us and getting through this. It's been a process, but they've finally been able to, they've accomplished it.
Item 4.2 is resolution 2021-55, approving and ratifying a bid and awarding a construction contract for Alta Hill Storm Drain Project. That's about $220,000 worth. Matt, any special introduction?
The introduction on this is the Scottish Drive subdivision. If you'll recall, we reconstructed that area. I've discussed this with you through the when we talked about the Recovery Act money. This is the storm drain line that was discovered after we tore the road up to reconstruct it. And this is for that replacement of that about 700 feet of storm drain line that is deteriorated to the point that it needs to be replaced. Yeah. So that's why if you get calls, there's a section of Alta Hills that hasn't been paved yet that we're trying to keep road base on, but this is a portion of that.
Any questions on the business meeting agenda? Very none. Let's move to staff reports. And Matt, let's go to you on the 5-year road plan.
Yes.
Now, this is the second 5-year plan, so I think that's exciting to announce that we're in the 4th year coming up.
That is correct. I will.
So this is the new 5-year road plan.
Go through that with you. Sorry, okay, so that's there. So far, so good. Okay, so as you kind of stated there at the beginning, Mayor, I'll try to run through this presentation fairly quickly, but at the end, obviously give council a chance to ask questions about what we're doing. But what I'd like to do right now is share with you where we've been and where we're heading to with this 5-year plan. As you're aware, some members of the council are new. They weren't here when this was originally adopted. The 2017, 2018, the 2018, 2019, I'm sorry, adopted a road maintenance plan. If you'll recall, prior to that, there was a study done where it came back where that well, bottom line, it's a lot of money to repair all of our roads. So the council at the time decided, and I think it was a great decision, to be honest with you, to fund a maintenance program where we would get to every road in the city, or our goal was to get to every road in the city and do some sort of a treatment, a maintenance treatment that would in effect kind of stifle the deterioration, if you will. It wasn't the ultimate road plan, but it was what we could afford
To
as a
extend the
city
life of
to
the road.
extend the life
Yeah.
as much as we could and to stop the, sorry, I had to make sure I sent that, stop some deterioration. Kind of put a Band-Aid, if you will, or to stop some bleeding, okay? So, and that covered years 2018, and it's still going through to years 2023. We break it down into fiscal year so that we can track it with finance and know exactly what we're doing. But we are right now in year 4, which is the 2021, 2022 fiscal year. We're in the middle of that one right now. So we're in year 4.
Let me just ask one question. You use the term Band-Aid, which always bothers me,
Sorry.
but no, because in some of those years, you're actually doing in some areas, almost a full reclamation.
Yeah, we're going to cover that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just all.
No, it's not, but a majority of it we'll see has been surface maintenance to get us to where we are. So as just a reminder, this is what the plan looked like originally. It was broken up into 5 years, and you can see that, and we'll cover it a little bit more. I believe about every quarter I report back to you as a council what we've accomplished on this program to give you an idea. So none of this is new. You've seen this many times over the last 3 to 4 years. So some of the things, the types of maintenance, just to share it with you, a majority of our work was focused, like I said, on the maintenance of the surface to help maintain the surface. And we're going to get into what you talked about, Mayor, here in just a moment. But our goal was to try to treat each road with something and slow the deterioration. We use different methods. We use crack sealing, slurry sealing, which was a majority of our work. Someone's trying to get in. We used a chip seal, milled and overlays, and as you talked about, Mayor, a complete reconstruction. Areas, this is something I want to bring up, some areas that were not treated because what we determined was putting a surface treatment on some of these locations would have been wasting taxpayer dollars. It just was not going to, they're so far gone that any type of surface treatment was just going to be a waste of money. So we held off. Prospector subdivision, if you go up there, that was slated for a slurry seal, but if you look at it, it doesn't make any sense to crack seal and do it. The Grandeur circle, and I forget the name of the horseshoe that goes around towards Grandeur Circle, that was left off. Now the others, Town Center Drive, Pine View, and Bridgewater are all part of this year and next year's. But I put them on the list that they aren't going to get hit with the surface treatment here. I'm going to show you in a minute where they're going to come up. So we did have some areas that we just were not able to get to because of budgetary constraints. If you, it just was budgetary constraints. They needed reconstruction.
So these are a mill and overlay was not going to be enough.
It was not going to be enough. It goes so far down and it's in the base. And I'm going to show you some pictures here about the base and what happens, just to give you an idea. I've also wanted to bring up not in the original 5-year program, but which we got some things done, but we're with one-time funding programs. Fort Union Boulevard, if you'll remember, that was a quarter of the quarter that we had. That money was used to resurface Fort Union Boulevard. Bangle was state money. Highland Drive was also a quarter of the quarter, plus federal funding at the intersection. Section of Wasatch was done by developers. Park Center Drive, 2,300 was the catnip money and 2,700 was STP money that we received. So these were one-time funding. So they were not in the original 5-year budgets. So there is this that we need to start considering. I'm just telling you as we move into the 5-year, the next 5-year. Okay, real quick, once again, you've seen these before, but I just wanted to brush through them if I could. I've highlighted the majority of the areas we've spent funding on. If you'll see slurries, this is year 1 of our program. We put about 2 million square feet of slurry down, but we also did mill and overlay, as you can see, Mary, you brought this up, and we did some chip seals, which are a heavier seal coat, but these things, we did not replace sidewalks, we didn't do waterways, no drive approaches, and no ADA ramps occur in this. So no, there was really no concrete program that happened. Year 2, same thing. I have highlighted, we did a lot of slurry seals that year. Area prep, you can see we actually doubled, I think, pretty close to doubled the area prep, which was crack sealing, and potholing and prepping things for the slurry. But by shuffling and moving the budget around and doing things, we still stayed under the budget that was allotted by the council to do this. This is year 3. To give you an idea, once again, the slurry, but the green, if you'll notice, is the racket club area that's under construction right now. That one is, like I said, it's being reconstructed. That was slated for surface mill and overlay. We got into it and it is worse than the originally what we thought. So we've moved forward with reconstruction. And we are doing in this area some ADA ramps, some curb and gutter, but no sidewalks. And we've changed out the waterways. The estimate on the budget is about $1 million when we're all is said and done. But that is under construction. And also in this is Alpin Way. Alpin was another one that was so far gone that we've removed everything and we've moved forward with reconstructing it. So as you said, there are quite a few things that we're doing that do involve reconstruction.
Can I just add something to Alpin Way?
Yes.
Again, just like along the lines of communication. It's great that while they're reconstructing, you can drive on it. But there's when they leave in the evening, there's, I don't know, like a pretty significant bump.
Yeah.
Not a lot of signage. I've got an electric car with batteries on the bottom. I only know about it because I drive there, but there's like no signage. There's no like warrant, I don't know if we could do a little bit better to like put some signs, because if I'd known, maybe I wouldn't have gone I went literally all the way through the Alpin Way because I wanted to avoid this big bump, and then I ended up and there was another big bump. I should have just maybe turned around, left the neighborhood in a different way. I don't know. Sorry. I don't mean to like, it's great that you're doing it, but maybe just a couple more sites. Maybe a couple flyers.
Is it when they mill it down? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no,
I
I
mean,
think when
there's
they
dirt.
cut, before they fill back in, there's sometimes a pretty hefty
Pretty hefty.
Drop.
And I think that's just working with the contractor.
It's not you guys, it's just your sub, maybe just
Contractor,
including that in the.
We will take a look at that.
Yeah, there's gotta be some spec that you can go over before you've got
Or just put a little,
a ramp on it or something.
yeah, put a little dirt there. So
No,
at the
and-
end of the day, you just kind of.
I think the feedback is during pre-construction meetings that that's something that should be identified in an action schedule.
I'm
Skateboarders.
Stay like that.
This is,
Okay, this is actually year 4 that we are in right now. You've already approved the contract for the slurry and the area prep. That's why those are highlighted. We still have other projects that will be coming forward, as I've mentioned before, that we'll be sharing with you for chip seals. I forgot to finish my thought there. I put question marks because I was going to ask someone. But it's 7200 South, 30th East, and there's a couple of others that will be chip sealed along with this one that you'll be seeing. I did not put year 4 in here. I mean, year 5, because we just haven't gotten to it yet. So moving into, well, this is projects. If you look at the list, these are all roads so far that have been worked on this last 3.5 years. These are all the roads in red. So, and we still have 2 more years to put on here. So you can tell that we are hitting quite a few of these roads and moving forward with the maintenance plan that's been laid out. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is move into where we are now. So we're presenting to you now the next 5-year program. If you'll recall, the first 5 years, we wanted to try to hit everything and help slow deterioration, fix where we could with the budget we had and go forward. This time around, this is heavily loaded in reconstruction. This is old neighborhoods that we will be bringing forward for reconstruction. And when we talk about that, that's complete removal of curb and gutter. That's new ADA ramps. These are full depth reconstruction, waterways. All of these things will be taken care of as we go forward. I wanted to show you this picture. This is actually out of Alpen Way. Give you an idea of the problems that we run into. This is what was dug out of what we call a soft spot, a tire. They're using tire for fill, which doesn't give me as much concern as the other material that's around it, believe it or not. It's this old asphalt that's been thrown in there, these chunks of concrete that have been thrown in there, and this road, well, lack of road base. You can look at it and tell the gradation of it. It's the lack of construction material that is causing, it's finally catching up. I guess I should say that. It's finally catching up. You can see that. And these are things that we're running into as we've taken the surface off of some roads, and this is what's happening. So, and we're trying to, and this is what's showing up. I believe this one might be Alpen Way, but you can see what we refer to as soft spots. This is one of those areas they dug up, and that's the kind of material that comes out of it. You can see another one here. There's another one up here. This entire road is covered with them, which is causing the cost of this project to just continue to skyrocket as we do this. So it's basically, it is due to poor construction material. We do have newer construction standards that are required. And I'm gonna have to say, just based on this, at the time of construction, a poor lack of oversight. Not too many people would allow a tire to go into the road base for the construction. And here's just some other areas that all of this, as you look at it, has to be dug out and replaced down to about 24 inches and brought back up. So
will projects like this be completed before winter?
Projects like this is when we move forward with the new plan, we will be bidding them out based on the timing of the budget.
So is this project completed now?
This will be done Monday.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah.
that was my
Because this one's
question.
going on now, but
Yeah, this is ongoing. right
Yeah, that
now.
was really my question.
Yes. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any more after Racket Club area and
Racket
Alpen
Club,
are
yeah.
done. We don't have any more going on this winter except for crack sealing, which is the wintertime project when the weather permits. So I just want to give you an idea of some of the things we run into when we talk about costs that are coming up. Reconstruction is definitely more costly than new construction. And it's definitely a lot more costly than maintenance as we go along.
So the new 5-year plan, I read between the lines, you're hinting, not hinting, you're giving.
I'm flat out saying it.
Saying that the cost impact to the city budget will be greater.
Yeah, in some cases,
Substantially
yes,
more
it's
because
gonna
of.
be.
we're
see a
getting-
lot less surface treatments.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot less surface treatments, and we're gearing now more towards construction or reconstruction of the older neighborhoods.
Fixing some 30, 40-year-old
Yes,
neighborhood roads that,
Correct. And this is,
Sure.
which were
Yeah, you
probably on
see
your
it.
last list,
correct,
the Grandeur and Bridgewater.
correct. Town center and things of that
Yeah.
nature. Yeah.
Matt, was the oversight on this, how old is this road? Do we know?
It's probably about 40 years old.
So was the oversight that poor that many years ago?
I would guess it would have been. I mean, like I said,
What's the
I'm
same-
guessing
Probably
just
safe in
because
saying
of
yes,
the-
because the guy who was supposed to oversee it's probably dead.
I'm not, like I said, that
That's
you
just-
can't, that's just lack of
Well, it's the same
oversight.
issues like,
It's not the material, it's that.
well, it's the same issue of, well, how many hundreds of manhole covers have been.
Yeah,
Exactly.
covered up.
covered
That
up.
was just
250
awful.
plus manholes that are covered, which should never have been covered. I mean, it's
That's what's
common
left.
sense. Yeah, what's
That's what-
remaining.
We had 700 at the beginning.
So, I'm leading up to kind of greasing the skids. And also in the 5-year plan, you've seen a lot of this. Now, one of the things we have done in the 5-year plan, I got to get through this, is we have estimated about 1% of the total square foot for concrete replacement. In other words, curb and gutter that is sagged because of some issues and because it doesn't do any good at this point to fix or surface a road if you still have water getting underneath it through the curb and gutter. So we put some money in there for that. I'm just going through some, and we talked about this that weren't on the roads already. I forgot to remove this slide, but there are some roads that will be in here that we'll be discussing. So the new plan, as we move forward, this is a preliminary plan, and you'll see not every road is hit at this point. A lot of reconstruction, a lot of, there is some slurry seal, but mostly it's reconstruction. As you can see, there's some years that are laid out as we go through. And there's different costs for each one of these, and I'll go through the costs, but in a nutshell, this is what we're looking at. Now, you'll also remember the other map that I showed you where a lot of these roads have been hit as of recent, like up here on top of the world has a new surface, a seal surface on it. So there's a lot of things that are being pushed off that we feel like they can go another 5 years based on the work we've done. And then we rotate it through again. So as we,
So that last map wasn't all reconstruction, that was a variety.
no, that's a variety of things inside that, yes.
Okay, all right.
So as we go through, if you'll recall, the first year was around $1 million from this last one. The estimate at this point is about $2.6 million. And we've broken it up into, I went backwards. And it's broken up into areas A, B, C, and D are within these color codes that you see. The details aren't here at this point. We still have a year and a half to work through the details as we go through it, but these are our estimates for these projects. Sorry, I jumped ahead on you. It's 2.4 million on the first year estimating. You'll see some of the mains are in there. 2.6 million, you'll see some reconstruction in there. Area C, I believe, actually is some of the mains. No, it's not, sorry. It's reconstruction. You'll see 2 areas in this one. And once again, 2.8 million and 2.4. So these are the estimates as we go forward, with a lot of emphasis at this point on taking the older subdivision and reconstructing those that are to the point that it doesn't do us any good to try to, sorry, Mayor, Band-Aid them,
Yeah,
glue
yeah, we
them
don't.
together however you will.
But I think the point is well taken, that many of those years are roughly $1 million more than they were
Correct.
previous years. So Scott, in his 5-year financial analysis, is going to need to incorporate that to see where we are.
What we have been is like the 171.
Yeah, we've been around 1718, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for what we set it up for, it has been great.
No.
It's been a wonderful program, and we've seen a lot of improvement on the reconstruction areas. We've also seen a lot of stoppage of deterioration and giving us another 5 years as we work into this one. And then the next one, you'll probably see a rotation back to a maintenance portion as we kind of work our way into this. I mean, ideally, it would be great to have all the money to get it done in one shot, but we have to be, well, you do, you're the council, you,
Well, no, that's one option you always have. You have
Yeah.
low bond rates, you can come in and bond for it.
yeah. And those are things that will be discussed as, you know, I know there's.
There's many ways to finance it, that
Sure.
you can be creative as you, if the demand becomes so high that you can't meet it in 1 year, you can look at the cost benefit analysis of looking at another creative financing thing, and I know other cities have done that, but we've chosen not to do that, which I think is a good decision up to this point, but it's something always should be analyzed going forward. But I of course applaud the efforts of the 5-year plan. I think it's really allowed us to move forward and have an impact. I appreciate even being more aggressive, which I think this shows, because some of the older neighborhoods, like Racket Club area, that's one that I'm glad to see done this year. It's
Yeah, that one has been sitting on the books for about 8 years or so as we've pushed it.
Yeah, that one around Bridgewater and.
Bridgewater's
There's
centers like that.
yeah,
There's,
You're calling Racket Club where Canyon Center is now?
yeah, we give it
Okay.
an area just
Well,
by a
actually,
name.
Racket
Sorry.
Club Drive, then going west,
I
all
see.
the way down
Yeah,
to
it's,
2700 east.
All the Apple roads and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the Apple and Pine Cove.
Right,
and all
right.
those are there.
Matt, these are based on the cost today, right? I mean,
no, well, yes, they're based on cost we have now on bids that we have gotten.
Right.
But we also put in, sorry, I want to try to get back. If you'll recall, when we originally did this, we did an escalating percentage based on UDOT,
okay.
a
so
UDOT projection. We escalated a percentage. And we've done the same with the new plan. There is a growth factor built into those costs. Now, that is still, I mean, if we go to the end of the program, we're 8 years out.
Yeah, that's a long way.
It's a long way, but if briefly, I mean, if you look at our estimates and our actuals from,
Pretty tight, yeah.
we didn't do too bad. I mean, these aren't fudged in any way. These are bids that came in, so we felt like we did.
So to
pretty
you
good.
and to Tim, when does this plan come back to the council for adoption?
This, remember, we still have one more
Yeah.
program, one more year of the program. So it's obviously up to Tim, but I would assume we would, not on this budget cycle, but the next one, we would be coming forward with the plan to finance and a plan to finalizing the plan. So there'll be a couple of more visits with the council
Yep.
over getting down in more detail of what we're doing here. But the council will see it a couple more times.
No, I appreciate the update as we transition to the council, showing the progress we've made in the last 3 years, because it's substantial, but a lot of work to do. Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
Again, time is short tonight, so we'll try and be judicious in moving forward. We do have the closed session at 6:30 regarding real estate. Item B on staff reports is looking at the availability of providing a trail of some kind along the Murray Power Line, which is up in District 4. Mike, you want to introduce that?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This, I think, comes from the council retreat or the council priority list from this past year. And the directive was to look at the feasibility of developing a trail underneath a power line that's owned by Murray City within an easement. So I just have a couple slides and some background information, and I'll turn it over for council discussion. This is this picture here is turned sideways. So east is the top, the mountain is the top, north is to the left here. And on the very left side of the page is the high T intersection. That's where the power line really starts, kind of up on the city property, the 26 acres that was recently acquired. Heads north to the high T and actually crosses Little Cottonwood Road. And the power line actually continues further north on Wasatch, maybe half a mile to 3/4 of a mile up the road along the west side. But what we've looked at is there is a power line there. It's owned by Murray, and there is some sort of easement underneath that. I looked at a few subdivision plats of the developments along there, and in some cases that easement encroaches 15 to 20 feet in the plat. In some cases, it looks like it's more within the UDOT right of way. And then there are some vacant parcels there that don't have subdivision plats, so I don't have exact descriptions of the easement on those portions, but the graphic here is the power line, and I think just a 50-foot kind of buffer on both sides of it, just to show a potential trail corridor, what that could look like. We got some preliminary feedback from Murray City, who did not seem to have any major issues with developing a trail within the easement. That's correct? So the challenge here becomes working with the private property owners and with UDOT, where the power line exists and where the easement crosses, because we're okay with the easement, but then you've got the actual real property to deal with there. So we have come to the point now where we have a good sense of where the power line is and its kind of alignment. It does affect quite a few private properties, or depending on the trail placement, UDOT right of way, which I don't know which one is more challenging there to deal with, whether UDOT or the private properties. But the next step would be approaching the private property owners and seeing if they're willing to accommodate a trail or potential trail development that may encroach on their property, and do the same with UDOT. Few things to keep in mind. Sorry, that text got really small and I don't know why. The power line easement owned by Murray. I've covered the first two slides, the first three bullet points there. The fourth one's important. The EIS, as part of UDOT's EIS process, they have identified a multi-use trail along Wasatch Boulevard. And right now, it kind of ends at the high T. And we provided pretty strong feedback that we think they should continue that trail past the high T throughout Cottonwood Heights and actually all the way down to the Little Cottonwood Canyon Park and Ride. So you would have a complete multi-use trail system within the UDOT right of way. I talked with the EIS staff about this again and said, is it likely that trail would be continued in the EIS? And they didn't commit to anything, but did indicate that the city's comments were helpful in helping them push that a little further. So we won't know for sure until the final record of decision comes out in a few months. But I'm not as pessimistic as I was before that UDOT could continue a multi-use path within their right of way through the high T intersection and down to the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon, which would put a trail fully within UDOT's right of way and be built at their expense, rather than the challenge of trying to negotiate with property owners and build it at the city expense. Now, the alignment changes a little bit. It's not on the west side of the road. It'd likely be on the east, but the trail is in the same general area. So if staff had to provide a recommendation at this point, we would prefer to wait until we see that record of decision, until we know if that trail continues through the high T or not. And if it does, then UDOT may take the burden on building that trail in there, and then it'd be pushing of like, when can we get this done? And if they don't include it in their record of decision, wherever they go, then we could pursue with private property owners or UDOT at that time.
So Mike, are we now including this then in our trails master plan?
There are trail connections, yeah, all the way down through this area.
I mean, is this specifically identified in there?
It's kind of just along the road.
Yeah.
And then in our plan, we identify a few. This is now too zoomed in. We identify one that looks like what UDOT is doing. So it just kind of follows the road all the way down to the mouth of the canyon.
So where does Bonnego shoreline come through there?
Well, it'd be up here on the foothill or up on the hillside. And then this is the city property. So we would anticipate a trailhead somewhere right here. So a trail within the right of way would connect Little Cottonwood Canyon to Big Cottonwood Canyon, actually down into Holiday. Could connect to Ferguson and Bonneville shoreline at this location.
Like the one thing I noticed, there's going to be a cross across that Wasatch, right?
Well, so the power line crosses. What's
does.
mapped right here is the power
It
line.
might stay east, you're saying?
If UDOT were to include this in the EIS, what I think they would do is continue the multi-use path as they have shown it on the rest of Wasatch, which yes, is all on the east side.
Okay.
So it does not cross. Now, we may still, as a city, need to look at, hey, can we get a trail connection across to the city's Wasatch here? There are still properties that would affect, but with the power line, you're dealing with a power line that jumps across the road at a weird angle there.
Right,
And how do you deal with that with a trail?
right.
If UDOT did it, it would probably be more
But you
consistent.
affected a lot of properties along that.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell. I drove out there again just this afternoon. The power line really looks like it's almost right on the property line. So it's hard to tell which would be more affected, the right of way or the private property if we were to build a trail. And we would need to dig in to the exact, legal description of the easement and where that is to know that for sure. But one way or another, we're dealing with private property owners or with UDOT, both which would present some level of challenge, I think.
Well, I think UDOT would be cooperative and with the acres we have. But
Sure.
Christine, I know you've got some thoughts about this you've had in the past. Any
Yeah,
perception?
sure. Got lots of comments. So one comment I think that I've heard, and I think probably the mayor has heard repeatedly, is that everybody loves the idea of a trail on the east side, but there's nothing on the west side connecting. So I think any chance that we have trying to obtain an easement on the west side of Wasatch Boulevard would be a welcome amenity to every resident in District 4. The other thing I would say is that many people who access the Despain parcel on their bicycles, say they're mountain bikers, you have to ride your bike along Wasatch Boulevard. When you're doing that during the summertime, late summer, when Oktoberfest is going on, it's quite a scary endeavor. So anything we can do to even get a portion of those bikers off the road from a safety perspective, I think would be very welcome.
And there's a lot of bikers doing that. There's a lot.
There are a lot of bikers and they're of all ages.
Yeah.
Many ages. I see bikers from 10 or younger, all the way up to 60, 70, whatever. So I think most people would welcome it. I understand from the staff's perspective that this seems hard and difficult and time consuming, but I wonder if we shouldn't be thinking about like, what is the definition of a trail? Like, could a trail just be some kind of dirt path? I mean, I don't think that like we're thinking, I was never imagining a trail would be something, some amazingly improved. I think just some dirt, that's almost, I think they're existing. So really it comes down to the property owners and is this easement, and is this an exclusive easement? Meaning, can anything be built under that easement as it's written right now? Can somebody put their house under the easement? Can anything be put underneath that easement? No. So the space is always going to be there. So it's a matter of talking to the landowners, and maybe sort of a compromise would be just focusing on the trail on the west side for now. Getting back to my point is anything that any small trail that we can get anywhere in our city is, I think, a welcome improvement. If we think that perhaps, and I don't know, how many years would the east side trail go in if UDOT decided to do it?
I don't think that's detailed yet. I don't know that we
3,
know.
4 years. I mean, it's not imminent, right? So I don't know, maybe if you were to take it and look at it in stages, stage 1, maybe let's just talk to the landowners on the west side and see there, rather than, taking smaller bites out of an elephant. Because when you look at it from the whole, maybe it does seem daunting that look at all the private property owners, that seems hard. We have limited staff, all those things I totally get. But maybe if we looked at it sort of not a big trail, just something simple, smaller segments, rather than.
I don't want to misconvey that we don't want to do this because it's hard. That's not the case. We have come to a point where we've done some preliminary analysis and if this is what the council desires for us to jump into this and start working on it, we absolutely will do that. But we want to bring that to the council for direction.
Mike, I have a question. The trail, it looks like it's already existing there. What do we call that trail that connects to?
This here.
Farther to the right? You're right there. What's that?
Well, that's the little, I think people call it the Jeep Trail that's on the city-owned property.
Connects with
So that's a city.
Does it terminate there?
It continues down throughout that property.
So basically, you take
joins
it to
back
the
in.
end, and it's basically at the T where
Yeah.
Little Cottonwood Road and Wasatch meet, and then by the sign, you can cross over and you can get to the quarry trail.
Okay, so
So
would
from there, almost to, you can go almost get to the quarry trail on trail.
There's,
get all the way up to Canal.
there's a lot of people in District 4 and even in the other districts who will ride that little path right there on their mountain bikes to get to the quarry trail. That's their access. And
Gotcha.
up and back. In the evenings, it's a lot.
We like, it's in the master plan. We want to see trails here, but again, what I was trying to convey is, a couple months, UDOT may come out and say, yeah, we want to build a trail. And they may, again, the timing is important to consider there. And if it's on the east side, we still need to focus on how to connect to the west. So we can start looking at the west side, but there's a chance here that UDOT builds a multi-use trail that's safe for everybody and does it at their expense within their right of way.
And those two little cul-de-sacs that are up there, what are those?
This is Salt Lake City. That's a water tank right
That's a
there.
tank.
So just
They
switchbacks.
have access there.
That's
all the
road
time.
access up
Yeah,
to the water tank.
okay.
I guess, yeah, I keep coming back to, I appreciate that UDOT might build that. I'm still not clear after the ROD comes out and they design it and they build it, we're still years away from that.
Could be, yeah.
But what I hear repeatedly are the people on the west side feeling like it's too dangerous to get to the east side and there's nothing on the east side for them. And I just wonder if we were to get this, if this is just another point, a pushing point to poke UDOT to say, we need another crossing here in addition to here and here. I mean, I think we've, as a council, talked about how can we get more of these underground or overpasses along Wasatch Boulevard. Does this get us, can this push them a little further to give us one here or someplace near here? I don't know. I just like maybe strategically looking into the future, how, and when we're off the council, can we leave something for you that might help get that?
Plus it might slow traffic down there a little bit, so it's safer too. We've talked about some semaphores, but either under or over would be wonderful to connect that together.
Well, there's some fundamental things we've talked about, and this specifically with UDOT is going underneath is something that they agreed that is palatable over or under. So we've had that discussion, but another fundamental thing here is with the city's trails master plan is to codify this in some form as you work through it with the new council because of the access to the canyon, and as well as going over and under, not Wasatch, but the road there where the power line goes through.
If y'all haven't done it, I might suggest this up by Lagoon. You can literally go from Lagoon all the way up to the VST.
Yep.
I don't know, have you done that?
Mhm.
And you're going underpasses over, you're going along power line easements. I mean, I think it really shows, I think it would really show, if you haven't been there, Mike, it might be interesting. I'd be happy to take you on our bikes because I think it really shows you how you can bridge that sort of urban to sort of rural interface. And then
My son lives by Lagoon, and that's how he gets up to what that canyon, that mountain up there.
Farmington Canyon.
Yeah, and Farmington and the other one.
Oh, the B or the other one. Anyway.
No.
Mueller Park.
Mueller Park, yeah. They can go anywhere on those trails up there, and they live on the west side of the freeway. Yeah. My other son lives right here and takes that trail almost every night after work. He'll ride that to get the quarry trail. Every night. That's his ride. So there's a lot of people using it. But I think our direction, sorry for my voice, our direction to you, Mike, is the fundamental support of using the easement of the power line to provide the connectivity to both sides of Wasatch into the canyon, understanding that the EIS is a part of that process and how we can collaborate with that. But also is a good suggestion is defining what the trail, itself consists of. Because in some trails master plans, you'll call for asphalt, and some will call for asphalt on part of it, then soft surface next to it. Sometimes that's for equestrian, like in Dimple Dell, or other things. So it's formalizing that with PTOS input, I guess, and getting something moving, yeah. So we continue to make progress. For the questions of Mike, but again, I'm hopefully there's fundamental support of conceptually moving in the direction of emphasizing trails. I know in the Y2 analytic surveys too, it's always showed high support of that. And like you said, that staff are supportive of looking into these things.
Yeah, our plan shows trail connectivity all along the corridor. It shows it not here, but down here, cutting, cross access down to the city's Wasatch. So there's, once that plan's adopted, that will be codified in a plan and we can.
Then once
keep
you have a
working on
plan,
this.
the thing I hate about plans is they sit on a shelf. So also an implementation
Sure, yeah.
aspect of some things we can start showing a priority list of,
Well, we can bring this to the next council retreat if the council wants to start negotiating with property owners and doing trail design and,
Well, for me, I think the next
To that
step would
point, we
be
can
to
do that.
incorporate that into your trails master plan and modify the plan at all to see the connectivity to Bonneville shoreline and west side of Wasatch, to see the whole picture.
Mhm.
And then with the rest of the trails master plan, then start prioritizing, like Christine said, biting a piece of the pie here, and
Elephant.
I like pie.
I've never eaten
And
that.
start looking at some
Nice.
implementation. It's like years ago when we did the big Cottonwood Canyon Trail, and then this last year we did the Mountain View Park Canal Trail.
Mhm.
You have to start doing pieces, and then eventually they start connecting. Again, I tell the story of the Jordan River Parkway. When I started some first phase of that in the 1970s, I never thought I'd see it complete, and there it is. But you've got to start doing
oh, yeah.
piece by piece. And
Yeah,
I think we've done a fairly good
The
job.
East
of
Jordan
not
Canal
keeping
Trail was on a
our
2015 plan.
plans just sitting on shelves. Because once we do get the plans together, that's one of the ways we've used our lobbyists.
Yeah.
So that they're aware of what's
But
out
I think
there.
that's a good point. Once you have an implementation schedule, then you have to start looking at a funding aspect, and that's when you, like you say, start using
So
lobbyists.
we
to
would like to
find-
be able to do this is already to go. This fits what you've got here.
Well, and the question, any funding source will always ask, how does it fit into your plan? And having the plan is critical, then legislature and other sources to fund it. No, I shouldn't mean to be critical. It's just like I just said, it's a good
It happens
reminder that
places, certainly.
in the process is having a plan, and you can always modify the plan, but start implementing pieces of the plan, just like the 5-year road plan. It's great to have a plan, but the exciting thing is that we're implementing it.
How many, do you happen to know off the top of your head about how many landowners are on the west side? Are there 10?
Well, let me go to that. This,
Or maybe
but,
maybe you could send a map later.
yeah, we can. So one of the challenges is down here, you have a condo
Yeah. that's
that
what
has
I-
about 12 owners right along there. And we need to see where exactly that easement affects those properties. You got a few parcels there and then it continues north. So,
Yeah, but
Um,
easement can't possibly be, isn't,
well, these are parcels, that's not buildings. So the easement could be in the yard of each of these. So we can determine that. We can do that analysis.
We don't know how far UDOT comes to the west.
Yeah, we need to align the UDOT's right of way with where the easement sits and how that affects.
Okay, we need to move forward.
We'll do that.
We're gonna run out of time, so thank you for the feedback and again, looking into that. It was part of our retreat and our annual action to look at that, and hope you sense the full support of moving forward. Item C is an item that has been asked to be on the agenda by our Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee, of asking us to consider additional funding or creation of a fund for open space. Mike, do you want to?
Yeah, about a 30-second introduction. This was, I talked about at a previous council meeting and then fully supported by the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee, but there was an idea or desire to include in the budget a Parks, Trails and Open Space project line item, more akin to a capital type project budget that's funded for for larger parks, trails and open space type projects each year. So that fund can be saved up over time and used for large projects or used annually for smaller park projects. And I think part of the desire was to avoid having to rely on grant funding to do all of our PTOS related projects and instead proactively budget that in as a project line item. it's a budget discussion, so that's up to the council, but staff is, we're supportive of it. It'd be great to do that. And the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee was fully supportive of it as well.
Comments?
Is there a amount suggested or just the concept?
By the committee, I don't think so. Because I think they figured that was a council discussion point, but again, large enough to cover some of the larger, parks projects we do, build a trail or, improve a section of a park or complete new open space, that kind of stuff.
Couple thoughts, couple comments, as I've kind of processed this. One is to have a fund or have money allocated each year as a budget process. That's one thing, and you can do that every year. And it's up to the future council to leave it in or carry it over or whatever. Other options are to look at another funding source. I think we talked once a while back about if we're one of the few cities that does not implement the telecommunications tax. Find out if there is support for that tax on telecommunications. Dedicate that to acquisition. That's another option. Also, we can look at what the county has done. I think what they've done is they have a fund that is created, and I think it's been funded from a couple resources. The last resource, I know it came from the track fund, which goes into a fund that's managed by Julie Peck-Dabling, and then if it builds up, and then they have applications and they acquire land. How they do that, I'm not sure, because we don't have. I mean, I guess you could create an enterprise fund, which would be its own fund, but you have to have the revenue source.
If the main revenue source is coming from the city, it wouldn't really create an enterprise fund per se, unless you could identify, the source of funds. Usually an enterprise fund has that outside into it.
Well, it's like in the county. The county often donates general fund money to its enterprise fund.
Yeah.
So you can do that,
Yeah.
but usually you have some other amenity or something that's creating revenue that it's offset or used. So conceptually, it's a great idea. We currently have allocated, we just recently allocated a month or so ago, $700,000 to a capital line item for open space. It's something that conceptually, I think it's a great idea, because I think we have looked at the Bonneville shoreline and acquisition along that broad corridor on the foothills as a high priority to try and protect that and obtain that land. So we do need to look at mechanisms, and some of that will hopefully be the state. We do not have the type of fund that can support a lot of money going to that each year. But if I was in a budget process, which we're not, and if we were putting $100,000 a year or two or something like that into an open space acquisition, as long as our fund can support it, I'd conceptually love to see something like that. I just don't know the timing right now. I'll do that because we just moved 700,000.
I don't recall a time we ever did anything anywhere near that.
What's that?
I don't recall any time that we've ever put that much money out of the general fund into the.
Yeah.
It's almost always been grants, so we've been ready, and when grants have come up, we've been able to fund things.
But we've matched and we've done some
Yeah.
things.
And being able to match those things and being able to has been a great reason to have that.
But I understand what PTOS is saying is dedicate something formally so that it gives an indication that that is a priority in the direction we're going, which I think we've always done it based upon need at the moment rather than planning for it. So,
Well, and I think a good example of that might be the need for signs at Ferguson Canyon or this hammock garden, which doesn't have a high cost, but they've asked for it. And they've just sort of been sitting wondering if that's gonna be added to the budget.
Yeah.
And it's November, we still have 2 more council meetings. And so it sounds like maybe they're gonna have to wait till the next budget meeting, so I don't know if there was some even small bit of money allotted to that. They could have come and said, hey, this is how we'd like to use that. Council could say, that sounds great, and go and do it, and there's some certainty. I mean, the nice thing about some of the councils that, you know, the Arts Council or the, you know, the Butlerville Days, like they sort of lead up for this great event. And the PTOS goes through and spends all this time, and then they have a need and they ask us, and it just sort of sits out there. So I think it's great.
But
I mean,
think-
just for something simple like a sign at Ferguson Canyon,
Oh, yeah.
right? I mean, just something, I'm not saying 100,000 or 200,000.
But yeah, having something set aside, but I'm not sure that what you're saying, though, a sign to me is an open space acquisition
Well, I mean,
or
It's-
funds for a garden. I thought, what I interpret them saying, maybe I misunderstood, is that open space acquisition. If they're talking about park improvements,
I think either would be fine.
Yeah, I think it was the, what I took away is a general parks, trails and open space project fund. That can be acquisition, that can be, small projects, that could also be able to, you know, if that's saved up, larger projects as well.
okay, then I thought it was open space funding.
Well, no, I mean, that could be too, but I think as you
I think it's-
mentioned, and as Tim has mentioned, you know, we're ending and somebody's beginning, so
Yeah.
maybe at our ending, we could do something smaller, and you've given great ideas for the next council.
But they presented their priority list a couple meetings back.
Mhm.
And where did we leave that? I thought
We're getting more detailed cost information right now. We're waiting.
because a couple
some
of those were
information,
no
right?
brainers.
Right. There's just no budget today for it, so we would have to come back to the council to request it, but we're pricing out. We got some more
And the
direction.
reason that their requests were not in the last budget process,
We didn't,
They
Yeah,
didn't
it's my
exist
fault.
yet.
it's my fault.
so it wasn't to us. So I have no problem like on the pollinating garden or something like that, where they thought we had it, we didn't, that we do something. My honest opinion is you could do that tomorrow with no budget adjustment out of existing funds.
Is this the one you're mentioning, maybe?
If you want to debate me on it, I can show you where it's at. Okay, example. The money that's set aside to maintain Butler Park, that was never transitioned to us. You could take that money and you could allocate it for a couple of those projects if the council concurred that those were viable and is within allocated park funds already, as you're saying. Would that,
Sure. Because the funding is there.
yeah,
We have
and
it.
it's for the purpose of what you're saying, and we're not using it right now. It's a perfect example how if you bring us back a couple of those things, because I think they were pretty minimal costs.
Yeah, I think they can be.
Does that have a time limit on it there?
The fund,
Yeah, the funds.
July next year,
June 30th, isn't it?
June 30th. But the
When
point
the new
being,
budget starts, it's
the
always.
point being is we could communicate to PTOS that through their request, we've identified something in our current budget that was open space or park that could be to meet those priorities they had previously identified, and then the next council can then take it from there. Plus, I don't want to discount that the council has allocated 700,000 for open space, which is what you're.
And I thought we'd kind of given the go ahead on the signage to make sure that that was.
Yeah, I think what we understood was support for the projects. We just didn't have a hard cost number. And we're working on that, like I said. and
Well,
we can get
the
that.
Ferguson Park signage will probably come out of the project cost.
That covers some signage to get up there. It doesn't cover the signage.
Oh,
that's up
yeah,
there.
up at
So
the
this would
top.
just expand it slightly.
But I think, but anyway, if that could be some direction. Okay,
So at the net, we'll work on the costs, try to have some cost projections together and we can bring them back to the council and then
Yep.
talk about the funding for those, which you've identified the potential.
Again, that's one year funding. And then going forward is something on your retreat priority list you'll talk about again and get those going.
Okay.
All right. We've got about 30 minutes, so we're actually almost on schedule. Also, as part of the retreat, God, I don't know my voice is, must have been the dinner that gets part of our retreat just last year, we identified, I think it was 4 items regarding police reform. We would look at if it was part of training. We talked about that. Talked about meeting with different ethnic minority groups. And we talked about that. Those 2 were kind of ongoing. The third was looking at the police motto logo. And that could be part of Y2 analytics and an upcoming survey or something to get citizen input on. The other one was consideration of a police advisory committee. We talked about that a couple meetings ago, and Tim was going to bring back some further information of examples of what other cities are doing. And we can have some comments of where we go from there.
Okay, so I'm having a hard time with this sharing here. Like you said, at the last meeting that we discussed this, the council asked Chief Russo and I to go and talk with other cities, including police chiefs and city managers and other individuals related to how things are working with those citizen advisory boards. Hold on just a second here. Skip this. So keeping in mind, we have allowed under House Bill 415, there are some elements that are allowed, and I presented this the last time, and those that are prohibited. The main focus of this is the citizen advisory boards. They don't have separate jurisdiction other than what the police chief has. So it says, however, the police chief retains discretion to follow any recommendations or not. So there's specific things that are in place related to what you can do under House Bill 415 and what you cannot. So these, for example, they don't have independent authority from the chief of police. They don't have any authority to overrule hiring or appointment proposals. And there's a variety of different things. I've shared this with you before, and I can go through it, but there are some very strict limitations under state code. We talked last time about a number of the cities. There's many cities that don't have these advisory committees. There are some that do. UPD has them, Salt Lake City, West Valley, West Jordan, Murray, South Jordan, South Salt Lake, and Provo. They're all cities that have had those, and we have talked with individuals with each of those communities. Basically, the bottom line is the approach with all of these jurisdictions, they're very different, but we've categorized them into 3 general areas so you can understand a little bit how they function based on these varying approaches. And we've categorized them into 3 areas: a broad advisory role, an advisory review role, and then a general public safety role. Let me just explain a little bit with that. So UPD, Provo, West Jordan, and South Jordan all take the broad advisory role. So they do things such as they're a communication bridge between the police and community. They review more broad issues such as emergency management, as an example, neighborhood watch issues, specific issues that the police chief asks the committee's input on. May include also insight on policies or other concerns such as uniform or grooming standards. May include input on surveys or other suggestions to enhance communication between the department and community. But their emphasis is on this broad advisory role on issues that's coordinated through the chief of police. So like I say, UPD, Provo, West Jordan, and South Jordan.
Do these groups say who appoints the members?
I have,
Well, you can, I don't want to cut you out.
yeah, I have some of that in each of the jurisdictions.
Sure.
I believe the city council, on most of these, the city council appoints, or the executive branch appoints them, and then city council confirms those. Chief Russo, this South Jordan might be different. They may just Do you know on that one?
No, I actually think they're they're the same, that oftentimes the police chief makes recommendations to the executive and then processes as you described.
Yeah, I think they all do that. South Jordan was the only one that I have a question in my mind. Then you have the advisory review role. So this is South Salt Lake. And by the way, they just adopted an ordinance. I don't even think that they have formalized the committee yet, at least from my research.
South Salt Lake,
South Salt Lake.
they have, and they actually hired 2 FTEs in the police department to coordinate it.
Yeah.
And it is in process now.
Yeah, I just don't know if they're up and functioning quite yet. They're that new in this. But West Valley and Salt Lake have had followed this advisory review role where they assess citizen complaints of police misconduct, include citizen input on the use of force issues and other complaints. And one of the aspects that they really focus in on is requiring substantial training for members if they're providing input on these types of things. Once again, their input, it's input that they provide to the chief of police based on state code, but they do review these types of things, which is more of an advisory review role. And then the final one, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, obviously Salt Lake and West Valley, how big is the South Salt Lake Police Department? How many officers they have? Do you have any idea?
In South Salt Lake,
Yeah, I know it's.
I think he's up to 76.
So it's a pretty good sized department, even though they're.
It is, their daytime population is very high because they're industrial, but the nighttime population is 24.
And then the final area is the general public safety role. And this is actually, Murray is the only one that's doing this. They pursue an approach that includes public safety. It's not specifically focused on police or fire, but they combine those two elements. And so they have representatives that are there looking at both police and fire issues, insights related to public safety in general, not just a one jurisdiction such as police or fire. So the roles, those are the three just general categories of roles. I have more information that I provided last time on the specifics for each. I have UPD, Salt Lake City, West Valley, South Jordan, Provo, and then Murray and South Salt Lake. More of the details related to each of the boards, but in general, those are the three categories of boards that we're seeing and how they function, which there's a lot of difference between the three. So you asked us to do the research. That's the research we provided, and we're bringing it back to you as you requested.
Well, a few questions. Are these boards in these different municipalities, are they created by ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Have we looked at the language of any of the ordinances to see? I imagine Shane would do it for us.
Yeah, we've looked at some of the ordinances with these, not all of them.
Yeah, I mean, just, yeah, so they are. So they would be similar then to a PTOS committee, a arts council, historic committee, that were all created by ordinance.
I would assume if we went that direction, that's what would.
Well, what would the other direction?
No, that,
Yeah. So it'd be-
yeah, it would be similar to
because it's
that.
not by statute like planning commission,
No, it would be ordinance passed by,
when it's passed, which you would have the language which would define
Yeah.
the role,
Probably,
responsibility.
it wouldn't be like the DRC, which is probably administratively created. or something like that. Yeah, I would expect if we're doing
Because
this, it'd be like our other committees. that-
Where membership still flows through the council. So on all those committees, the
Ultimately, you get Cam interviews and it
interviews
suggests.
recommends to the council and we appoint.
yeah, so I know on the two newest committees that were created, which was South Salt Lake and Murray, they were by ordinance as far as creating those. The thing that I'm in conversations with South Jordan, it seems to me like it more flows from the administrative side and the police chief on working with these people. I would like to get a little bit more understanding of that. I don't know if you have.
I actually think you're correct.
I don't think it's formalized through ordinance at South Jordan.
But I think, again, we haven't decided we can go in there, but if we were to do it, I think consistency is a lot easier administratively, that you do it the same way you do PTOS and you do it, or any of those where you have an ordinance that clearly defines the role and responsibilities. Because if you don't have that, then immediately. So I don't want to do all the talking, but thoughts, comments from the council?
I did have one question. I expect I know the answer. Riley, you probably have, it's going to you.
Yeah.
Because of what Tim has said. But because I guess personally, I kind of I like the concept of the last one where it's a public safety overall and because in the first one, you were talking about emergency management, which the fire has a lot to do with. It's not just the police. So I like having that connection there. A huge difference between us and Murray is they have their own fire department. So I guess the question would be, I'd be curious how having us being a part of UFA might be able to, or what restrictions or hindrances it's a little bit different working as part of a larger group in a section, how much flexibility there is as opposed to.
So how do you think that would be a problem?
It's a coordination. Is that what you're saying?
No, if you decide to have an idea,
Are you saying
from a UFA standpoint, you want to keep things as consistent and as uniform as possible. So as people move through and they do different things in different locations, they're already up to speed on everything that's going on. But if, for example, the Cottonwood Heights Public Safety Committee or whatever happens to be, say, well, we kind of like to do these extra things, then someone coming into one of our stations kind of needs to be brought up to speed. Maybe that's not a big deal initially. I just see where it could potentially be an issue, even though I really like the idea. That has to do a lot with the way UFA is managed overall and how much flexibility they give down to the
Well, I think
captains.
Yeah, it's
in my interpretation,
or the-
UFA has really put forth the image of wanting to allow each municipality to have its own identity, to probably even doing patches and anything else.
Right.
Where it's not policy and advisory, there's so much communication and sharing of ideas, because the same reason we have our own police department is because we can customize it to the needs of our community. And I think from Chief Peterson, of course, he's retiring next year, so we'll see what happens, but that there is a level of customization they allow, and it could be a good thing, but
Right, and
I
I'm just bringing that up as that I could see that as, and I don't know the answer, and I can't really ask, well, how does it work other places, because what we were just told is no one else
Actually,
is
this
even.
is the opportunity we're looking for, because we want to be integrated and we are your fire department. So this is a great opportunity for us to hear what people have, their thoughts, their concerns, and be engaged at that level, at the lowest, the lowest level in the community, to be able to be down there with the citizens sharing their thoughts. So I think this would be a great opportunity for us to engage and be part of that. And as the mayor shared, that it's advisory, and our policies are definitely can be nimble as far as if we need to adjust something. If the community shares something with us that we're not doing well, this is a great avenue for us to correct that. So I think, even though it's a big organization, we're very flexible to each of our individual communities to give, provide the service that they want. So I think we could work around that.
Well,
I'm optimistic.
I expect that's a lot of that does come from the top. I
Yeah.
mean, and I went through it 12, 13, 14 years ago, dealing with all the things that we wanted to do locally that we weren't able to do.
well, and I think
But I
the
don't
ordinance
see-
would have to be sensitive to those.
Right. Because they should still gotta run job one, but that again, just a.
A year ago or last when we were talking about this often, I hadn't thought about public safety, even though later on that came to mind, is that possibility of doing public safety, because they're both important. I know like Christina's advocated for years that fourth firefighter at 116. And this is where you would want those citizens to understand and ask questions and then work to that and things like that. As well as all the other areas, neighborhood watch.
Yeah.
Emergency management.
Because usually when there's the neighborhood watch type, I guess, gatherings, I mean, it's not just the officers that show up. Kids love them. They like the fire trucks and the firefighters just as much to show up at the neighborhood and to be there for the
and I
4th of
see-
July things and all that. So
Well, let's not kid ourselves. They do like the firemen much better than they do the police. But I
Well,
can
that's
tell
just
you-
a great to integrate ourselves into the community.
And they've actually done a really
More so.
good job on
Yeah.
Riley and Fort Mahoney. Watch used to do a good job in tailoring the services to what we want in the community.
well, I don't, my comment's not to be
No,
negative in some way, but it's just I think something that would need to be considered.
I kind of like the
Sure.
I like
idea,
it.
I kind of like the idea of a combination of number 1 and number 3.
Right.
The broad advisory role, but including fire and police. If that's something that you start work through an ordinance, you can get the right language to define roles, responsibilities, and expectations. That could be kind of a creative approach to fundamentally, which is the reason this is give citizens that ability to have regular input on a scheduled formal basis, monthly or quarterly, whatever it is. I mean, you can always come to public comment. I agree with that. But again, it's kind of quick and you through it and you're following up. But this gives them like PTOS, I'd love to hear their dialogue. In the first several meetings I went to, they're great because they're passionate.
And I was gonna, that was I don't know, you weren't softballing yet, but I was just gonna ask, I know that would be another thing on your plate, but I was going to suggest with this conversation we just had, maybe after the 3+ years that you've had on PTOS, maybe if you have a moment to go through and look at that ordinance and see if there are ways that it can be changed and improved with your experience. Like, geez, we didn't get our budget requests in sooner, or we needed, maybe there's something in there that needs to be codified a little bit better, because that's been where you're at. Before we,
Well, it's the
Lose
same,
you too.
it's the same on Arts Council and Historic Committee or even.
Doug gets to stay next year, I'll ask him next year.
Well, when I was on the emergency preparedness, it was great. This is before I was elected, but it was great to see the coordination that we had through all the entities and communications and everything. So I look forward to making it a positive.
I mean, PTOS was brand new, that's why I was just saying, no one else has done it,
Right.
so.
So I like the recommendation of 1 and 3 together. Is that something that an ordinance could be drafted in the next couple of weeks?
Well, we need Tim to talk to Shane and find out what it costs to get a draft for us to look at.
Sorry.
So
What's that?
Tim will take the feedback to Shane and see how long it'll take him to pull something together. But if there's enough of an interest to do that, I'm supportive of that for one.
Two.
At least looking at an ordinance. And again, the future council can always take
But
it
it
away.
seems like it's something that, might start small because it's so new and could grow over time. So then we did have the August 6th event. There's some people who think X happened, some people who think that Y happened, and maybe if X and Y got together, that starts to bridge some things. And if we had something simple now, start with very simple, like wouldn't be terrible.
Yeah, but I think again, it gives citizens an opportunity to have input. I think, again, looking at PTOS committee and that format where the process is application, process goes to the manager and then it comes through the council. I think, again, in the ordinance, it talks about recommending diversity in the group, both in location within our city as well as ethnic background, all those things that give a good representation of our city. Now, originally, you may have 7 to 9 members. You would not want too many because it gets difficult. You don't want too small because as soon as you have 1 or 2 that are not there, you have such a small number. So finding that balance of number, and I'm sure you've got some of that. And getting a draft to look at. But again, I'm supportive of combination 1, 3 and including fire, which I think would be a great direction. I appreciate Scott, you bringing that up.
I think we need a little bit more time because I would want to sit down, obviously, with police, but we need to meet with Chief Peterson, Riley, and as we're working towards this, I mean, the model can be, as far as the formation can be like Murray Cities, but there's a little bit more in depth that has to go into the partnership relationship with UFA.
But I would even not, I mean, I would look at Murray's language of the ordinance, but also I would give a little more emphasis on following consistency among our current ordinances or other.
Yeah.
Things, yeah.
I
Get with Shane and see what that takes to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would just want to sit down with them as well and make sure they're comfortable with what we're proposing, because what is
Make sure
different
they
is,
can work together, what you're saying.
yeah,
Well, I think what you're saying is we got to be careful not to make policy for UFA that might impact the entire footprint of a much larger organization. And I think that's
Right,
That is what
and
we
again,
need to
that's
be
what I emphasize, these boards are not policy. Absolutely not policy. That's the council's responsibility.
So my question is, what city has implemented this the longest, that has given a test with time? Is this all brand new?
No.
What's the oldest one?
Salt Lake and the county have had
I had it in Salt Lake County. I had it.
they've had them.
What was your impression of it? Was it helpful?
Yeah, it was a very different model. They didn't give them cases to review or uses
I
of
see.
force to review. They had a group of citizens that didn't have, I don't know, for lack of a better term, access to grind. And a lot of it was productive, and they were good people, and they gave us feedback on policies and span concerns that we had or that they had, and
So it can
we only
generally
met quarterly.
can be helpful and beneficial is what you're saying if it's done right.
If it's done right, if it's managed right. Yeah. But again, I want to be careful that we don't try and compare ourselves to Salt Lake City or to West Valley or a small community has a much different
Needs.
sensitivity and needs, and to customize it to meet our needs by way of the ordinance. Having it a public safety focus, that could have a nice flavor to it, and that's a good new to me thinking of that. So, you know, you're talking to Riley and them and getting their feel and comfort level and with Robbie, and then giving to Shane and coming up with the draft ordinance or some more questions of the council that we can respond to quickly. We'll have this thing teed up, and but again, the council, again, this is not formally accepting or adopting it. This is just allowing the discussion to continue with the ordinance to be drafted to look at.
There's some details like what.
Yeah.
Tim has said that
Absolutely.
the ordinance is going to be what it is, but there is some administrative details.
Well, you want the right ordinance. So
Yeah.
draft the right ordinance, you better do so. All right, let's move forward. We need to go into a closed session to talk about real estate.
just note the calendar, the 11th is Veterans Day and City Hall's closed, and then the Thanksgiving Day is as well.
Right, and for those of you who are going to run the Thanksgiving 5K, that's Thanksgiving morning.
Where did you find it? Did you bring it to them? And then they go,
No, they actually.
but I need a signature.
Yeah.
But I mean, how did you find the shirt?
They sent them.
Oh, it is? There's a catalog? Maybe it was. I wish I knew what, you know.
I may
sitting
very
on the
much-
country.
You know, I know my-
Are we in?
Nope, yeah. We gotta have a motion. Gotta have a motion.
Is that the name?
Oh, we need Doug to pay attention.
Doug, pay attention. Douglas,
Yes.
we need a motion.
I
Move that we close the open session and open a closed session for the discussion of real estate transactions.
and I second that.
All in favor, say aye. Christine?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Never mind with the public work. Yes, I want to, yeah. Let me see yours. That's the only difference is yours is
I
got
saw
public
the,
works, right?
the head of the
I
outdoor.
like that, the color, and I like
From
how
LA
it's the
today.
gray and the white. Looks good.
From the
Is that
office.
the first one like that you've ever had?
Yeah.